Hello! So this video is a long time coming and it is the science behind reusable period pads like you saw in my last video, so like these two. So we're going to talk about the cloth lining, so the thing which is in between the fleecy bit and the fabric on top. And the cloth lining in reusable period pads is what absorbs the period, so we're going to be talking about those, and this video should hopefully be useful for people who want to know what pads to buy best suited to their flow, and also for anyone who wants to make period pads, which cloth linings are best to buy. So we will get straight into it. So first I'm going to go through the different samples of cloth linings that I've been sent from a lady who makes reusable period pads. The first one we're going to talk about is ZORB first generation. So the texture of ZORB first generation feels like felt. So I'm going to sort of talk about some things about that. So on the website Reusable, which is American, where you can buy ZORB from, it has a 5-star rating. Now it says on Reusable that you shouldn't pre-wash this because it has already been pre-shrunk. Now, when I talk about the others, some of them need to be pre-washed because they haven't been pre-shrunk. With ZORB one, it has been pre-shrunk, so you can get it. If you're planning on making reusable period pads, you can just buy it and then you can just go straight into sewing your pad and you don't need to worry. Washing instructions, this goes for if you already have these as well. Then you aren't allowed to use fabric softener or bleach because that affects the absorbency. You can wash at a maximum of 40 degrees and you can tumble dry on a medium setting, and that should be fine and it shouldn't affect the absorbency. Now if we compare it to another material which I have here, apparently 2 layers of ZORB first generation absorbs the same amount as 8 layers of flannel. Now this is flannel, I have 4 layers here. It apparently absorbs 10 times its weight in less than 2 seconds, which is quite impressive, and it's obviously, yeah, pretty good. And if you add more layers of ZORB 1 to the centre of a reusable pad, then its absorbency increases exponentially. All ZORB is made in the USA. And the lady who sent me these samples, she said that she spent £11 per metre on ZORB first generation. ZORB is actually really economical, so £11 per metre is pretty good because, as I said, it absorbs exponentially. If you're making a light period pad or a regular period pad, 1 layer of this might be okay. Not that I've ever weighed my period. Right, so if we move on to ZORB 2, this is ZORB 2 with dimples. Now the dimples in this material, which you can't really see, but you can probably hear my cats. Chickens! Hello! So the reason for the dimples is to increase the surface area of the material. I'll feed you in a bit. Okay then. Okay. The dimples increase the surface area of the material, which means that it can absorb more, and also the dimples mean that it can retain the moisture as well. So if you compressed this, then it shouldn't leak out, it should just stay in it. So the texture of it is really soft. Compared to ZORB 1, this is really soft. It feels sort of like a sweatshirt, like a sweater, jumper sort of material, maybe. In my opinion it does. It's just really soft, and basically the reason it's so soft is because it's 30% organic cotton and 70% bamboo viscose, and in the middle then it has ZORB fibres which are made out of cellulose. This also has a 5-star rating on Reusable, which is the American website. You do need to pre-wash ZORB 2 because it will shrink. So if you're planning on making your own reusable period pads, once you've bought ZORB 2, then you need to pre-wash it and then start sewing, otherwise you're going to have problems when you're sewing. And it says that you should do it on a hot wash but to make sure that the absorbency doesn't get affected, make sure that this is a maximum of 40 degrees. And this was bought for £20 per metre, according to the lady who sent this to me. If we now move on to ZORB 3, now this is ZORB 3rd generation with dimples, and again it's really soft. It feels sort of a bit chunkier than ZORB 2. This one feels thicker. It's really soft and it's just really nice. It has a 5-star rating on an Etsy shop called Ab Fab Textiles, which is a shop I found when I was doing my research. And because of the dimples, again, like ZORB 2, this is able to retain the moisture that it absorbs even when it's compressed, so it's less likely to leak, which is obviously really good because you don't want your reusable period pads to be leaking throughout the day. That's obviously not what we want. Again, like ZORB 1 and also ZORB 2, don't use fabric softeners or bleach because that affects the absorbency. Fabulous. So we'll now move on to flannel. Now here I have 4 layers of flannel. The reason is because flannel itself, this is really thin, really soft, but it's really thin. And this is made out of cotton and polyester. Now the lady who sent this to me says that she isn't really a fan of flannel, probably because it isn't as economical as ZORB. ZORB, obviously, you only need sort of 1 or 2 layers to sort of make a really good period pad, but with flannel you need quite a few layers for it to actually be able to absorb sort of the same amount of moisture as one of these. So flannel is £4 per metre, probably because it's so thin and because you need so much of it to make a good period pad. And ZORB 3D, so like ZORB 3 with dimples, is £26 per metre. Now, just briefly, so this is another sample that she sent me. This obviously would go into a reusable period pad, and this is a sample of bamboo fleece and also with ZORB 3. So this is what she would put in a heavy period pad. So ZORB 3 is obviously very good for heavy periods, but we're going to test that out with the liquid. Now bamboo fleece, it feels very similar to ZORB 1, but it feels a lot looser, so it feels like I could put it apart a lot easier. And you are meant to pre-wash bamboo fleece as it will shrink. The bamboo used in this fleece is apparently organic, which is what we all love. So now, because I've spoken about them, we will now move on to the liquid. Now I'm not sure how I'm going to do this because I don't have any electric scales. I only have this, which is unable to read really small changes in mass. So we're just going to have to do it by eye and opinion. So I did some maths and I made sure that all of these squares basically has an area of 225 centimetres squared. So it feels really light at the moment. Feeling it, I can barely feel it, it's really light. Now in here I have 400 millilitres, which of course this isn't going to absorb all of it, but we will see how much it does absorb. This is a completely fair test. It's absorbing it quite well. And already I can see that, like immediately when I put liquid in the middle, and I could see that it was distributing the liquid really well. So when it comes to your period, obviously it comes out of one area, your vagina, but obviously the period needs to distribute around the whole fabric so that it doesn't leak. Still absorbing. I don't have much liquid left. So it's absorbed quite a lot. Obviously it is now leaking, and I can see that the top bit here is getting paler, so it distributes the liquid quite quickly. Yeah, no, you can see it getting paler. If we put it back in the liquid, and this top half should absorb it all again. So then we started off with 400 millilitres and we are left with, say, about 200. So I just googled how many grams 200 millilitres is, and conveniently it is 200 grams. This is absorbed clearly really well, and again if we watch you can see the top bit's gone quite pale and it's distributing the liquid really quickly. If the fabric wasn't able to distribute that liquid quickly, then you just have a puddle of period in your pants and it would be awful. But that's not what this does. Now I folded it in half, but I'm just going to press it and see if it comes out. So if you're on your period, obviously you would never let your cloth lining in the pad absorb this much liquid before you changed your pad. But as I'm pressing it, sure, some of the liquid's coming out as I would expect because it is really full, but immediately it's being reabsorbed again. So I really like ZORB 1, I think that's really good. So that was when it was just one layer, but if we now try it with 2, we'll see how quickly it absorbs. Actually no, we're trying it with 4, look. Okay, we're trying it with 4 layers. Okay, it has reached its maximum. And just like the first time, it's absorbed about 200 millilitres, but I'd say it probably did a bit quicker because now there was less of it to travel through. So because it didn't have to travel as far to distribute all the liquid, it absorbed it a lot quicker. Hence why I like this. It absorbed it a lot quicker, hence why when you increase the layers of ZORB, then the absorbency increases exponentially, which now makes sense. Cool. So then, I am now going to move on to ZORB 2. This is ZORB 2, so we will see what happens. So again, we're starting off with about 400 millilitres in the same area. Oh, excited. What the fuck? So this is ZORB 2. It's a little bit pink because obviously I just did it, but I'm going to show you what happened now. You see it sort of sits on top before it then goes into the fabric. And then it absorbs. Right then, ZORB 3. I'm excited for this one. So if I show you, so as you can hopefully see, that is ZORB 3 and here is the liquid. And when I pour it on, it sort of sits on top and then it absorbs. And now that it's already absorbed some, although it's not saturated, it sort of absorbs it a lot quicker. So if we make sure that this corner has some, there we go. Okay, and now if we get rid of the excess, there we go. And now we'll talk about the weight. Okay, so the weight. So this now feels quite heavy, although it's really good. When I squeeze it, the liquid doesn't really come out. So it's good at retaining liquid, which is what was said. I bet if I did that again, it would absorb a lot quicker than last time. Sort of sits on top. It's clearly very good at distributing the liquid. Now we're going to move on to the flannel. So we'll try one layer first, and this isn't going to absorb very much. This is sort of what happened with ZORB 2 actually. As you can see, it's just sort of sitting on there like a puddle. And then if we leave it for a little bit, it is absorbing. Now this clearly is absorbing a lot slower than the other ones, which is probably why the lady who sent this to me didn't really like it. It is literally just sitting on top. This is going very slowly. What the hell? So flannel is clearly not very good at distributing liquid. We will now try all 4. See what happens then. So we've got the first one on the bottom. We now have 3 fresh ones on top. And again, the liquid is just sat on top, just like in ZORB 2. And crazily, the liquid's there, but it hasn't gone through. What's the point? What are you doing? It just hasn't gone through. The middle one is bone dry, basically. What's going on? Yes, Lulu, I can hear you. Well, I don't know about you, but I am very confused about flannel. What on earth? Look at that. This is the top one. That's the bottom. Oh, that's the one underneath. There is nothing on it. And this is the third one. It is bone dry. You're a bit bad at absorbing, aren't you? Okay. Right. Moving very swiftly on from that disaster of an absorbing fabric. We will now test out this. This is an example of the cloth lining that someone put into the centre of a heavy period pad. So we would probably have the... I wonder which way should we put it? Well, I'm going to put the ZORB on top and then have the bamboo at the bottom. So, again, if I show you what I'm doing, so there it is. Here's my liquid. And let's see what happens. Ooh, honey, you absorb. As you can see, it's already like spread out the liquid, and it's gone to the bottom one, and there's still room for more if we make sure that all of it has it. And then if we hold it up like this, you can already see it's going paler because it's distributing the liquid downwards. So this combination of ZORB 3D and bamboo seems really good because I don't have very much left of this liquid. So this combination of bamboo viscose and or bamboo fleece and ZORB 3 seems really good because if we just get rid of the excess for a heavy period, I think that it has absorbed more than a heavy period right now. And as I said, if you're on your period, you wouldn't leave your pad in for so long that it would get like this. But it's good to know, isn't it? It's good to know how much it absorbs. Yeah, I really like that. I don't get heavy periods, I still get moderate ones. So I don't need to use this, for example, but someone would. And if you're watching this and you get heavy periods and you're thinking, oh, I really need a pad which can absorb my heavy period, then I recommend getting a pad which has bamboo fleece and ZORB 3D as the cloth lining combination. Right, so if you are looking on websites and you're looking for reusable period pads, then they do say what they use as the materials. So putty pads, which is where I got this from, and also the chemistry one, which I showed in my last video, they use fleece, so like the bamboo fleece here. They use ZORB 1, and they also use a material called pull, which I haven't talked about in this video because I don't have a sample of it to show you or to demonstrate to you. But if you're curious, then go and Google it. This probably has pull in it, I can't actually remember, and this absorbs pretty well, so I think that pull's pretty good probably. Now there's also a shop called RAGHAG shop. Now the lady who runs that shop, she's the one who sent me these samples, and she uses ZORB 2, ZORB 3D and also bamboo fleece. So this is ZORB 3D and bamboo fleece, and that's really good. Personally, I wasn't a fan of the ZORB 2, but with ZORB 1 then you never saw a puddle of liquid, it just went straight in, whereas with ZORB 2 you do see a bit of a puddle before it absorbs. So that's sort of like up to you really. But RAGHAG shop is where I got this from, and also another one of mine, and this is, I love it so much. It absorbs really well and I don't need to worry about it throughout the day, so I'd really recommend Pussy Pads and also RAGHAG shop, because I myself have used pads from there and they're really good. So other shops that I looked at whilst doing my research include Honour Your Flow. They use pull, they use wool, they also use cotton fleece with pull as well, so they use a range of different ones. And none of those I've talked about in this video or demonstrated, so it's up to you to do your own research on that. A shop called Lady Days use ZORB and bamboo fleece in their pads, which are nighttime pads, and they also use cotton flannel, and they use that cotton flannel in their panty liners, which makes sense because it doesn't really absorb very well. So I suppose for panty liners, flannel is good, but if you're looking for a regular or a heavy, then definitely make sure there's no flannel in there. They use bamboo fleece in their regular and heavy, which I would recommend, so Lady Days is probably a very good shop. There's also a shop called Lunar Landings. They use ZORB 2 in their heavy pads, bamboo fleece in their regular, ZORB and bamboo fleece in their extra heavy, and they also use cotton flannel in their liners and bamboo terry in their light. So all of those sound really good. Obviously for liners, cotton flannel, like this. As Lady Days, they do the same thing, so they have it in their liners, which is pretty good. Bamboo fleece is really good, as we've demonstrated. ZORB is good, as we've demonstrated. So I'd recommend Lunar Landings and also Lady Days. I haven't used their products, but by the sounds of the cloth linings they use, after testing them, then yeah, I'd recommend. So they're my opinions. Now the next thing we're going to test is the shrinkage. So we are going to wash the 225cm squared patches of material, and then afterwards, when they come out of the wash, I'm going to measure them again and just see how much they have shrunk. So I've washed the cloth linings. This is ZORB 1. This one didn't need to be pre-washed because it had already been pre-shrunk, and that's right, this hasn't shrunk. So ZORB 1 is still my favourite because I think it absorbs the quickest, it doesn't shrink. You can just, if you're making reusable period pads, you can just go straight into sewing after you've bought this. And I would say that ZORB 1 is just really good, so that's great. Now ZORB 2, this is ZORB 2. ZORB 2 has shrunk a little bit, and it said that it would shrink because it says on Reusable that you do need to pre-wash. This is now about 200 centimetres squared, and originally it was 225, so it isn't a huge shrinkage. Now moving on to ZORB 3. ZORB 3 is 224 centimetres squared now, which means that in total it's only shrunk about 1 centimetre squared. And now flannel. Flannel is not great because these are the different layers. Flannel isn't great, as you saw earlier, and flannel has shrunk a bit. It's now about 208 centimetres squared on average. This is good for panty liners, and that's probably about it. So if you want to make lots of panty liners, then I'd recommend flannel. So they are all of the materials we tested. Overall, I'd say that ZORB 1 is probably my favourite, and ZORB 3 is also really good. And for panty liners, then use flannel. I hope this video was really useful. And if you have any more questions, if I haven't covered something in the video, please do comment. And I will see what happens for my next video. I don't know what it's going to be yet. Definitely check out the shops which I mentioned. I will link them in the description. I will also link the websites where I found all the information about these. And yes, any questions, just comment below. Thank you for watching.